Imagine giving one person the authority to create the rules, enforce those rules, decide whether those rules have been broken, and punish anyone who resists. There would be no independent review, no meaningful restraint, and potentially no safe way to challenge the people in power. Every day, governments, organizations, and public institutions make decisions that affect our rights, responsibilities, opportunities, and freedoms. But behind many of those decisions is a deceptively simple question. Who has the power, and who has the authority to stop that power from being abused? A functioning system of governance cannot depend entirely on the wisdom or goodwill of one leader, one institution, or one political majority. It needs boundaries, it needs accountability, and it needs institutions capable of challenging one another. That is the central idea behind the separation of powers. But what exactly does separation of powers mean? Does every country divide power in the same way? Can institutions remain independent while still working together? And what happens when the boundaries between them begin to disappear? Get to know separation of powers in governance. Today, we're going deep into one of the most influential ideas in constitutional and organizational governance, and uncovering why dividing power may be one of the most important ways to protect it. To fully understand separation of powers, we first need to understand the problem it was designed to address. For much of history, political authority was concentrated in rulers, monarchies, ruling families, or small elites. A ruler might create laws, command the military, collect taxes, appoint judges, and determine punishment. Where authority was concentrated, the consequences of poor leadership or deliberate abuse could be enormous. The idea that different public functions should be assigned to different institutions developed gradually. Ancient thinkers, including Aristotle, examined the different activities performed by governments. Later political systems experimented with councils, assemblies, magistrates, courts, and other institutions that distributed responsibility. In 17th century England, political conflict between the monarchy and parliament raised fundamental questions about taxation, lawmaking, representation, and the limits of royal authority. The English philosopher John Locke distinguished between legislative and executive functions. His work argued that government existed to protect rights and that political authority was not unlimited. During the 18th century, the French philosopher Montesquieu provided one of the most influential explanations of divided government. In The Spirit of the Laws, published in 1748, Montesquieu examined legislative, executive, and judicial power. His work warned of the dangers that could arise when major public powers were concentrated in the same hands. The goal was not simply administrative convenience, it was protection against arbitrary rule. These ideas strongly influenced constitutional development, including the design of the United States Constitution. Its framers divided federal authority among Congress, the President, and the courts, while creating mechanisms through which each branch could restrain the others. But the principle did not develop into one universal model. Some countries adopted relatively distinct presidential systems. Others developed parliamentary systems in which the executive emerges from and remains politically connected to the legislature. Over time, separation of powers therefore became more than a strict division into three isolated branches. It became part of a wider governance philosophy involving institutional independence, distributed authority, checks and balances, accountability, and the rule of law. What began as a response to concentrated political power now influences constitutions, courts, regulators, corporations, nonprofit organizations, and international institutions. Separation of powers does not exist in isolation. It forms part of a much larger governance ecosystem. At its center are three commonly recognized functions. The legislative function creates laws and approves major public policies. The executive function implements those laws and manages the day-to-day operation of government. The judicial function interprets the law and resolves legal disputes. But modern governance is more complex than a three-box diagram. Independent regulators may supervise financial markets, competition, communications, data protection, or public utilities. Auditors may examine government spending. Electoral bodies may oversee elections. Ombuds institutions may investigate complaints. Central banks may possess a degree of operational independence. The media and civil society can provide additional scrutiny, although they are not normally formal branches of government. Citizens are also essential participants. They vote, petition, protest, challenge public decisions, participate in consultations, and hold representatives accountable. The structure must therefore connect authority with responsibility. A legislature may authorize public spending, but an executive agency may administer it. An auditor may examine whether the money was used properly. A court may decide whether the underlying action was lawful. And voters may ultimately judge the political choices involved. These relationships matter more than ever. Governments now respond to cyberattacks, pandemics, terrorism, artificial intelligence, misinformation, financial disruption, and climate-related emergencies. Many of these challenges demand rapid action, but speed can create pressure to bypass ordinary scrutiny. Emergency powers may be necessary in genuine crises, yet they can also expand executive authority. If temporary powers lack clear limits, independent review, or an effective expiration mechanism, they may become difficult to reverse. Technology introduces another complication. Automated systems may influence access to benefits, immigration decisions, policing priorities, fraud investigations, and public services. If an algorithm contributes to a harmful decision, who is accountable? The developer, the public agency, the minister, the official who approved the system, or the institution that failed to supervise it? Separation of powers matters today because modern authority can be exercised through laws, budgets, administrative decisions, emergency measures, digital systems, and control over information. The question is no longer merely whether power is formally divided. The deeper question is whether each institution has the independence, information, resources, and legal authority required to perform its role effectively. At its core, separation of powers is the distribution of key governing functions among different institutions so that excessive authority is not concentrated in a single center of power. It usually contains several important elements. The legislative function. The first is the legislature. Depending on the country, this institution may be called a parliament, Congress, National Assembly, or another name. Its responsibilities can include debating and passing legislation, approving taxation, authorizing public spending, examining government policy, and representing citizens or regions. In some systems, the legislature also approves appointments, ratifies treaties, investigates public failures, or removes officials through defined constitutional procedures. A strong legislature does more than vote on proposals. It asks questions, requests evidence, examines budgets, conducts committee hearings, and challenges executive decisions. The executive function. The second is the executive. This branch normally includes the head of government, ministers, departments, agencies, and the wider public administration. The executive implements laws, manages public programs, prepares policies, conducts foreign relations, and responds to national events. Because it controls large administrative systems and often acts more quickly than a legislature, the executive can become extremely powerful. That is why executive authority is commonly subject to legal limits, budgetary controls, legislative oversight, judicial review, elections, and transparency requirements. The judicial function. The third is the judiciary. Courts interpret and apply the law. They resolve disputes, conduct trials, and may review whether public authorities have acted lawfully. In some jurisdictions, courts can invalidate legislation that conflicts with the Constitution. In others, constitutional review works differently, or the legislature retains a stronger form of legal supremacy. Judicial independence is essential. A court cannot provide meaningful protection if judges fear dismissal, retaliation, or political punishment whenever they issue an unpopular decision. Independence does not mean that judges are unaccountable. Appointment procedures, ethical rules, appeal systems, and disciplinary mechanisms can still apply. The challenge is to maintain accountability without allowing political control over individual judgments. Checks and balances. Separation of powers is closely connected to checks and balances, but the terms are not identical. Separation of powers divides responsibilities. Checks and balances allow institutions to limit, review, or influence one another. For example, A legislature may pass a bill. An executive may sign it, implement it, or in some systems, veto it. A legislature may possess the authority to override that veto under specified conditions. A court may later review whether the law or its implementation complies with the Constitution. A legislature may approve executive funding. An executive may nominate senior officials. A legislative body may confirm or reject certain nominees. These mechanisms deliberately create friction. That friction may sometimes appear slow or inefficient, but it can force consultation, expose weak reasoning, and prevent impulsive decisions. A 5-stage governance cycle. When the major elements work together, the process can be understood through 5 broad stages. Stage 1, authorization. A constitution or law grants a public institution specific authority. Stage 2, decision. The responsible branch develops, debates, or adopts a measure. Stage 3, implementation. The executive or administrative body puts the measure into practice. Stage 4, oversight and review. Legislatures, courts, auditors, regulators, or other institutions examine what occurred. Stage 5, correction and accountability. An unlawful decision may be overturned, a policy may be amended, spending may be corrected, or an official may face legal or political consequences. The exact approach differs by constitutional system. In a presidential system, the executive and legislature are generally elected separately and possess distinct constitutional mandates. In a parliamentary system, the executive is usually formed from the legislature and depends on its political confidence. This means that powers may be separated institutionally in one system but partially fused in another. The underlying goal, however, remains consistent. No institution should be able to exercise important public power without lawful authority, appropriate scrutiny, and a realistic possibility of correction. Understanding the theory is important, but what does separation of powers look like in the real world? Imagine a fictional country facing a major cyber attack. Hospitals cannot access patient records. Public payment systems are failing. Sensitive government information may have been stolen. The executive argues that immediate action is essential. It proposes emergency powers allowing agencies to restrict access to certain networks, collect additional data, and redirect public funds. The need for action may be genuine, but several governance decisions now become critical. Who defines the emergency? How broad are the new powers? How long will they last? Who can review their use? And what happens to the information collected once the crisis ends? A responsible legislative process could establish a narrow legal mandate, specify the permitted actions, require regular reporting, and include an expiration date. Specialist committees could receive confidential briefings without publishing operational details that would help attackers. Independent courts could remain available to hear challenges involving rights, detention, surveillance, or unlawful administrative action. An auditor could examine emergency expenditure. A data protection authority could assess whether personal information was collected and retained lawfully. The objective is not to prevent the executive from responding. It is to ensure that emergency action remains necessary, proportionate, temporary, and reviewable. Now imagine the opposite. The executive declares the emergency without a clear legal basis. The legislature cannot access relevant information. Courts are prevented from reviewing decisions. Emergency contracts are awarded without documentation. Surveillance powers continue after the immediate threat has passed. Even if the initial response was well-intentioned, weak separation creates opportunities for abuse, corruption, and permanent expansion of authority. Several practical practices can strengthen the system. Define institutional responsibilities clearly. Document the legal basis for major decisions. Establish independent approval and review mechanisms. Protect access to courts. Require transparent reporting wherever security and privacy permit it. Set expiration dates for extraordinary powers. Ensure oversight bodies have sufficient expertise and resources. Record dissenting opinions and unresolved risks. Create credible procedures for correcting unlawful decisions. Warning signs can include repeated attacks on judicial independence, refusal to comply with lawful oversight, punishment of investigators, manipulation of appointments, unexplained emergency extensions, and the use of secrecy to conceal embarrassment, rather than protect legitimate interests. Success should not be measured only by how quickly a government acts. It should also consider legality, proportionality, public trust, quality of decisions, protection of rights, and whether the system can identify and correct its own failures. The same principle can be applied inside organizations. A corporate board provides oversight. Executives manage operations. Control functions such as compliance, risk, and internal audit challenge or independently assess important decisions. The analogy is not exact. Corporations are not constitutional governments, but the governance lesson is similar. The person proposing a decision should not always be the only person approving it, implementing it, and deciding whether it succeeded. Despite its importance, separation of powers is surrounded by misconceptions. Myth 1. The three branches must never interact. In reality, complete institutional isolation would make government extremely difficult to operate. Budgets, appointments, legislation, and national emergencies often require cooperation. The objective is not zero interaction. It is structured interaction with defined authority, transparency, and the ability to challenge decisions. Myth 2. Separation of powers guarantees good government. A well-designed constitution cannot guarantee ethical leadership or effective administration. Institutions can fail through corruption, intimidation, political capture, inadequate resources, or public indifference. Formal rules matter, but so do professional standards, political culture, and respect for lawful limits. Myth 3. Judicial independence means judges can do whatever they want. Judicial independence protects courts from improper interference when deciding cases. It does not place judges above the law. Judges remain subject to legal reasoning, procedural rules, appeals, ethical standards, and legitimate disciplinary systems. The critical distinction is between accountability for misconduct and retaliation for an unpopular judgment. Myth 4. Checks and balances are simply unnecessary bureaucracy. Checks can slow decisions and create costs. But not every delay is waste. Review may uncover conflicts of interest, unlawful conduct, financial errors, weak evidence, or unintended consequences. The relevant question is whether the control is proportionate to the risk, not whether every form of scrutiny should be removed. Myth 5. Elections alone prevent abuse of power. Elections are essential, but they are periodic. Government authority is exercised every day between elections. Independent courts, legislative scrutiny, auditors, transparency rules, and free public debate provide continuing forms of accountability. A political majority may provide a mandate to govern, but it does not automatically provide unlimited authority. The continuing debate. Experts continue to debate how much power executives should possess during emergencies. Some argue that rapid, coordinated action requires broad executive discretion. Others warn that crises are precisely when rights and institutional safeguards are most vulnerable. The appropriate balance may depend on the nature of the emergency, the duration of the measures, the quality of available evidence, and the strength of subsequent review. There is also debate about judges and constitutional review. Strong judicial review can protect constitutional rights and minorities from unlawful political action. Critics may argue that unelected judges can obtain too much influence over major policy choices. There is no single design that resolves every tension. Every system must balance democratic authority, legal restraint, institutional competence, and individual rights. Governancepedia, fact or fiction? Fact or fiction? If one political party controls both the executive and the legislature, separation of powers no longer exists. The answer is fiction, but with an important warning. The institutions may still possess different constitutional responsibilities, legal powers, and procedures. However, effective scrutiny can become weaker when political loyalty discourages legislators from challenging the executive. Formal separation may survive while practical independence declines. This is why committees, courts, opposition rights, professional public services, auditors, transparency mechanisms, and institutional culture remain so important. What do you think? Can checks and balances remain effective when one political group controls several major institutions? Share your perspective in the comments. Separation of powers is often confused with several related concepts. The first is checks and balances. Separation of powers allocates different responsibilities to different institutions. Checks and balances create mechanisms through which those institutions can restrain or review one another. A system can divide functions on paper but still provide weak checks in practice. The second comparison is the division of powers. This often refers to the distribution of authority between national, regional, and local governments. In a federal system, for example, a constitution may allocate certain responsibilities to the federal government and others to states, provinces, or regions. That is a vertical distribution of authority. The legislative, executive, and judicial distinction is primarily a horizontal separation. Another related concept is segregation of duties. This is frequently used in corporate governance, finance, cybersecurity, and operational control. One employee may create a payment, another may approve it, and a third may reconcile the account. The objective is to reduce the risk of error and fraud. Segregation of duties is therefore an operational control inspired by a similar principle. Critical authority should not be concentrated without oversight. Separation of powers must also be distinguished from the rule of law. The rule of law requires public authority to operate within a legal framework rather than through arbitrary personal decisions. Separation of powers helps protect the rule of law by creating institutions capable of reviewing government action. But one concept does not automatically guarantee the other. A constitution may describe separate institutions while informal pressure prevents them from operating independently. Presidential and parliamentary systems provide another useful comparison. Presidential systems generally create a clearer institutional separation between executive and legislature. Parliamentary systems deliberately connect them because the government is formed through and accountable to parliament. Neither model is automatically democratic, stable, or effective. Results depend on constitutional design, electoral rules, institutional behavior, transparency, political culture, and respect for lawful opposition. Rather than asking which system is always better, the more useful questions are: can power be challenged? Can unlawful action be corrected? Can institutions obtain the information they need? Can officials be held accountable? And can the system continue operating when political relationships become hostile? Separation of powers has already changed significantly, but its development is far from complete. Artificial intelligence may become one of its most important future tests. Public institutions increasingly use automated systems to classify information, detect fraud, allocate resources, assess risks, and support administrative decisions. These technologies could make public services faster and more consistent. They may also create new concerns involving bias, privacy, explainability, cybersecurity, and accountability. If legislators do not understand the technology they regulate, oversight may become superficial. If executives rely on systems that cannot be meaningfully explained, affected people may struggle to challenge decisions. If courts lack access to technical expertise, judicial review may become less effective. The future of separated power will therefore depend partly on separated access to information. An oversight body that exists on paper but cannot inspect the data, source material, or decision logic behind an automated system may possess independence without meaningful capability. Technology may also alter how laws are created. AI tools could help analyze public consultations, compare legislative proposals, and identify contradictions within complex regulations. But these systems could also amplify hidden assumptions or allow private technology providers to influence public decisions. Governments will need clear rules concerning procurement, human responsibility, documentation, audit access, and appeal rights. Global problems create another challenge. Cybercrime, financial markets, artificial intelligence, climate risk, and supply chains operate across national borders. Yet constitutional authority is usually organized within individual states. Future governance may require greater international coordination without making responsibility so dispersed that no institution can be held accountable. We may also see stronger demands for transparency around emergency powers, political appointments, lobbying, algorithmic decisions, and public contracts. These developments could improve accountability, but excessive disclosure can create legitimate concerns involving privacy, national security, and the ability of officials to deliberate candidly. The strongest systems will not be those that eliminate every disagreement. They will be those capable of managing disagreement lawfully, protecting institutional independence, and correcting their own mistakes. Even as technology, politics, and public expectations change, the fundamental purpose of separation of powers remains the same: to prevent unchecked authority and ensure that power is exercised within a system of responsibility, scrutiny, and law. Today, we discovered that separation of powers distributes the major functions of governance among different institutions. We explored the roles of legislatures, executives, and courts, and learned that their independence does not require complete isolation. We examined the difference between separation of powers and checks and balances. One divides authority, the other creates mechanisms for review, restraint, and correction. We also learned that constitutional language alone is not enough. Institutions need genuine independence, qualified people, adequate resources, reliable information, and a culture that respects lawful limits. And we saw why the principle is entering a new era. Emergency powers, international challenges, and artificial intelligence are changing how authority is exercised and how it must be supervised. Most importantly, separation of powers is not designed to make every public decision easy. It is designed to make unchecked power more difficult. The tension between institutions can sometimes feel frustrating, but where enormous authority is involved, a degree of friction may be a safeguard rather than a failure. The question every governance system must continue asking is simple: who has the power, and who can hold that power accountable? But this is only one part of the much larger world of effective governance. In an upcoming episode of Governancepedia, we'll explore judicial independence, why courts must be free to decide. If you found this episode valuable, like the video, subscribe to Governancepedia, and activate notifications so you don't miss the next investigation. Tell us in the comments, which institution provides the most important safeguard against the abuse of power, and why? You can continue exploring governance, oversight, risk, accountability, and leadership at governancepedia.com. Thank you for watching Governancepedia, part of the MP Nerds ecosystem. Explore governance, understand power, strengthen accountability. Subscribe to Governancepedia. Visit governancepedia.com.